save her question. Hopefully she'll save it till after she's driving. So Kurt and Mary, I'm going to hand it off to you, and you guys can take it from where you were. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
You want me to do it, Kurt, or you? You're muted, so I hope you said okay.
Yeah, I did. I said, yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Okay. Well, I just am going to start a little bit through this with out of the book on how I see this thing. And recently I got this little book Tom Yule sent me, and it's on these 3 steps, and it's kind of intense, and it's been written by some members of this program. I'd really like to know who they were, because it's kind of my mindset anyways. But anyhow, in it talks about how this first paragraph kind of goes on about continued. So obviously we're not arriving anywhere because it says continued so many times. But what it says here is that we continue this for a lifetime, and that my understanding and effectiveness, it's not a lifetime, it's a lifetime process, that as time goes on, more is open to me, where I see it in a simpler way instead of a more difficult way. I see how, page 62 talks about simple ideas are the ideas in which we pass through the gateway to freedom. And I had such complications going on with everything. Well, what about this? What about, I just want to shut the voices up. And so this book is about step 10 and how we, when you say we enter the world of the spirit, that means that we're not alone, which is true. And that, and what happened for me is that, have you ever been in a situation that you reacted and you're watching your reaction and thinking to yourself, God, look, why don't you say this or that? But you're kind of on a roll and you can't stop it, and you watch yourself do something. Do you ever watch yourself do something? I finally one day asked, well, who is watching me do it if I'm doing it? So I realized that there's really like two of me. The connection is happening as I go on. I'm not so attached to whatever my outcome is anymore, and that if you look at what the 11th step says, is that we improve our conscious contact with God. So there's a contact that's happening. There's things that are happening, that you get intuitive thoughts and inspiration, and all of a sudden you realize it wasn't coming from you, and something was there. So I'm not alone. So something's watching. And then my book here is telling me to continue to watch for these 4 things. By the way, for those who, I realized one day, we're watching for selfishness and dishonesty and fear and whatever. That's just the opposite of what the Oxford group was looking for. They have something called the 4 absolutes. We just turn them around here. The 4 absolutes are unselfishness, honesty, purity, and love. So that's just a little mind thing that I played with one day, because I'd been reading about the 4 absolutes, and I realized that Bill just turned them around, and we looked for the opposite here. So I'm watching for this stuff. And it also occurred to me, if I'm looking for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, that every single one of them comes from fear. It's fear. And the book was right. I heard this long timer say one time, I remember who he was, Eddie Regan. I was in North Hollywood. I can still see him. And he said, if there's a higher power, there's a lower power. Now, I wasn't raised in any religion, so I don't have too many things about that. But lower power doesn't sound good, does it? Doesn't sound something I really think is. I thought to myself, where is that in the book? It took me years, but I realized on page, 67, it says, fear is an evil corroding thread shot through the fabric of my existence. So fear is like woven. Have you ever seen any cloth woven? They stick a piece of thread through every single thing, and then they tap it down. So fear is evil. So I guess I know fear more than I do faith, don't I? So it sounds like a lower power to me, fear. So that's what it's asking me to do. If I come out of my neutrality where I feel safe and protected, usually it's fear that's brought me out, and something is happening to me. So I'm supposed to continue to watch for that. And what had occurred to me that in this little book that I read, it says watch for it. It doesn't say listen to it. Don't listen to it and create a story when that fear comes up. That fear is going to have a story, and it's going to have justification and rationalization and do you ever notice spiritual stuff doesn't have any reason, rationale, or logic connected to it? And yet we're going to justify everything that's happening. So that's my thoughts on that. Whenever I feel as though I'm not in a place of neutrality, I know intuitively, oh my God, I'm coming from fear, please. And I go immediately to God. I think this is an interesting point. Once you get into the world of the spirit, it doesn't say call your sponsor first. It says you ask God immediately to have this fear. Just say remove the fear. Amazing things happen when you ask God things, which is kind of what I do in my 11th step. That I think is the thing you were listening to, Kurt, on how God disciplines us. If I'm in the world of the spirit, I better be disciplined enough to talk to the spirit. Okay? And I wasn't. I went and did whatever self-sufficiency thought was good. It availed me nothing at all, really. But, and then when I screwed it up, because I never asked this great power that, it doesn't cost anything to ask, we don't have to pay for this power. It's present for us. But that's taken a lot of years for me to see on that. And so I continue watching, then I direct, and I love what you said, Kurt. It's true. It doesn't say go do something for someone else. It says just have a higher thought about it, And that's an amazing thing, because immediately I move out of me, and I have some unselfishness. So this whole thing, I think, is having me live with not being selfish. Okay, have self removed to the point where I can be of use to somebody other than me. And so, of course, I love this. Sometime years ago, when I found this that said love and tolerance of others is my code, or our code, I heard somebody say, that person won't sponsor me until I can tell them what our code is. I thought to myself, I didn't know that we had a code. When I found that, I tell everybody, the code is love and tolerance. If anybody asks you, you'll know right here, page 84. So then it goes on, these are the promises that go on in this next paragraph. And I love the promises, as I said. And I love what it says about the promises. It says, I'm going to recoil from whatever problem that's been bothering me, like a hot flame. Now, a lot of you people know this and some don't. Some have heard my talks, and I hate to bring this up, but this will level me a little bit in your eyes. So for the first 7 years of my recovery, I went with married men. Bev would say to me, why don't you stop doing the things that hurt you? Well, it wasn't hurting me to the point where I should give up married men. And I couldn't understand that was, and Bev said, when you stop doing the things that hurt you, only when you stop doing it. It's kind of like when we stopped drinking, did we have any knowledge on why we drank? Well, when I finally stopped going out with married men, I found out why I had been going with married men. And it didn't occur to me, but I was beaten to a pulp for being married through my pregnancy and so forth, and the weekend guest with the local police. And there was something inside of me that said, you'll never get married again. And it was because of what trauma that I went through at that time. Now, I didn't know that then. I did. And Bev would say to me, why do you keep picking people that are not emotionally there for you? They can't be there for you. Well, I didn't want to have anybody, because I could get hurt again and traumatized at that level. So I don't like telling you that, but I'm going to tell you that at 7 years, I had a spiritual thing happen between me and my best friend, my God. And I knew without a doubt that I would never be with another married man, because what it says on page 70 is true. If I'm not sorry about what I'm doing, I will drink again. And I came very close to it. And I talk about it, and I know people sometimes come up to me and say, "We have to talk to you. I'm going with married men." I said, "Well, you're probably going to drink." You know, nothing one way or the other on it. You know, good luck to you on that. But that is something that I'm not happy that I did. But I'm here to tell you I recoil from married men like a hot flame. I recoil. That doesn't mean I don't see the good attributes in people that are married. And maybe one day I've stopped saying, well, I don't need anybody now. If it's God's will, it's God's will. I don't care what's going to happen. But I've found I can be happy with or without him. And I never thought that that was possible for me. So I have recoiled like a hot flame from married men. So that's one of the things that is true that happened to me. I react sanely and normally. I'm just going to use married men. This is easy because if you've done an inventory, I recoil from them. And then I act normal, sane. And I find that this has just happened. This is one of it's automatic. It's not like I'm trying to do anything. It says here, I see that my new attitude towards liquor, married men, food, smoking, drinking, whatever, was just given to me without any thought or effort on my part. Have you ever realized that well, I don't know about you, but when I first got sober, I would avoid the alcohol line in the grocery store. I mean, I don't know why. I thought maybe it was going to jump off and get in my basket or what the heck was going to happen. But, now I don't even care. It just was kind of, I don't care, whatever. I can walk by it. It just comes. And there's the word, miracle of it. I'm not fighting it, neither am I avoiding temptation. I feel as though I've been placed in a position of neutrality. Safe and protected is the definition of neutrality. And you're right. It doesn't mean boredom. It means I just feel safe and protected, even if it's kind of the Al-Anon thing that says serenity is an absence from the storm. It's peace within the storm because I'm in neutrality. I'm not attached to anything. I'm just seeing what is, and I'm feeling it. And it's a very interesting thing. Both Don had a heart attack, and I went into the hospital about 6-7 years ago and nearly died and had two things, that other flu, H1N1 and double pneumonia. And I think I did die and came back. But anyway, that summer afterwards, I was up to Fox. I don't know when I met you. Maybe it was the time. No, it was Don when I met. Anyway, Don, a woman Don, not D-O-N. But I saw Don Koyas up there. And I remember he was talking about his heart attack, and I was telling him, it's wonderful. We get old and we talk about being sick is what's the big deal now. And so he was standing there, and I says, something happened to me. Well, when I was, something I realized happened to me when I went in and I was in the hospital. And he said, what? I said, I wasn't frightened. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, and I wasn't frightened when I had the heart attack or the stroke. And I said, yeah, interesting. And so I was in a place of neutrality, safe and protected, in spite of what was happening to me physically. I've had that happen in different things. Very interesting promise that I want. That's why I do the steps. I'm there for the effect of this 10-step promise of being in the world of the spirit. I haven't even sworn off doing anything. Instead, whatever the problem is, it's been removed. It does not exist for me. I'm not cocky about it. I'm not afraid. That's my experience. And here's the kicker. And it says, as long as I keep in fit spiritual condition. In this next paragraph, says it all to me. And it says to me where I am today. It's easy for me to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on my laurels. And now, laurels, I love Juanita talked about it. And she said laurels, she had to look it up. It's kind of like getting a laurel wreath. I guess these athletes would get some kind of award, if you will, on my laurels. of something great that they've done. And in 48 years of doing this deal, I've done some great things. And if I rest on that and don't do something today, then I have blocked the sunlight of the spirit that's trying to get me today, that just allows me to, on a whim, say, yeah, I'll do this with you, Kurt. You know, it's like, other than that, my persona would have come in. My false self would have to prove something to you people. I don't have to prove anything to you. I answer to a higher source. And once you realize that, as it says on the bottom of page 62, that God's my employer, everything, everything, I can answer to that source. And hopefully some of you will like me. But this neutrality means that I don't need you to like me in order to be able to do something. And that happened to me full force with my daughter. For 32 years, I did inventory about being a parent because I was the worst type of parent you'd ever want. Just the worst. And I finally did an inventory. I remember when I did that inventory and I got into step 10, I realized that I was placed in a position of neutrality, that I want my daughter in my life just as much as I've ever wanted her. I just couldn't give away things I didn't have when she was young. I didn't have the experience of any emotions that were, I should not have had her, but I got the gift of having her. Now we have a different relationship. But I remember the day when something happened and there was some there was some confusion and upheaval that was going on. And I remember when it happened, I wasn't in a place of neutrality. And I went inside and I said to this presence that I feel very deeply, this one conception I have. And I said, oh my God, the last thing I ever wanted to do was hurt this child again. What has happened? I don't understand this at all. Why did I say what I did, and so forth. And she was sitting there and yelling at me for whatever I'd done. and it was due. It was okay. And out of my mouth came these words. Candace, you're right. I was wrong. I assumed because of something that happened that this was no longer not something we could talk about. And assume means I made an ass out of me and you. And for that, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't me who said that. And later on, there was something else that happened and she wanted to get me for it. I said, you could be right. I probably wouldn't do that either. In other words, I got exactly what this promise said. I reacted sanely and normally. I didn't defend. I didn't do anything. I admitted when I was wrong, promptly admitted when I was wrong. That came so natural to me. It was one way or the other. I didn't look at the circumstance. I didn't defend to the point where she would love me or whatever. I didn't do any of that. And as a result of that, our relationship changed because I got the promise. I was in a place of neutrality. I was safe and protected. And with it, I want her in my life with all my heart and soul. But I'm telling you, I don't need my daughter in my life in order to be here. And that was something I didn't think possible. And it sounds cruel, but it isn't. It's like I can love her more. And I remember there was a time as years went on, and since that time where she said something to me and asked me a question, and I told her, and I said, honey, I realized I don't need you. And she said, thank God. It was so funny. She said, now we can just be. And it was such an amazing thing. The unreasonable demands I put on loved ones to make me be okay. And Don Pritz said it. It's not selfish to live your life the way you want to live it. It's selfish to expect somebody else to live their life so you'll be okay. I've never forgotten that. Finally, that rang true for me. It's not something I'm trying to do one way or the other. But when I got that connection and I entered the world of the spirit and I was given the presence of God, I realized that you people all have gods. I'm not it. It changed for me. The promises came true for me. So I don't let up on my program. I have something, and I talk about this. The other Dawn, the woman Dawn told me about it. There's an app called Prayminder, Prayminder. You want to get it, folks. It's great. You can put your own prayers in. And one of the prayers I have that comes up anytime during the day, if I looked at my thing now, it'll probably be up there. And it says something of the effect of, make me the mother you want me to be, not the one you think I should be. I've included that to be, make me the friend you want me to be, not the one I think I should be. I've done it as a sponsor, make me the sponsor you want me to be, not the one I think I should be. I've gone to the power that I think knows better than I do. And so that is an important thing for me to continue to do day in and day out. Because I'm not cured of alcoholism. ISM, I sponsor myself. I'm not cured of sponsoring myself. I don't want to be like what my sponsor's husband happened at 9 years. He went out, and just before he went out, someone said to him, "You're like the golf pro. You know how to teach the game. You forgot how to play it." See, I never want to be the golf pro. I want to continue to play this game because this is limitless, and it'll pay me dividends for the rest of my life as long as I give the whole thing away. And I'm willing to do that because I want more. I want more dividends. And what I've realized is the time has gone on and I continue to do the drill. And, give away whatever I've got. I don't care. Do what you want with it. That I get a dividend. Maybe 2 dolphins instead of 1. But I'll know it's a dividend. I'll know it's a message. And I will feel the vibration of that. Because as it says down here, every day is a day when I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities. How can I best serve God? Not you people. How can I best serve God? Thy will be done, not mine. Not my will. For a long time in the 3rd step prayer, I read it the way it was, but to be honest with you, my conduct was this: take away my difficulties so I can get back to doing what I want. It wasn't to take away my difficulties so I can do God's will. It was so that I can get what I want when I want it again. I didn't understand that when it said in the 7th step prayer, grant me strength to go out from here to do your bidding, it didn't say, grant me strength to go out from here to do my bidding. This isn't about what Mary Thea wants. And I'm telling you that God has given me more than I ever wanted. I didn't even know I wanted the stuff that God has given me. It's such an adventure. So, and this is what I look at in step 10, and then I'll stop and you can do what you want with this. So when I get through that paragraph and I realize I'm not sponsoring myself and I better have a sponsor, I better have people such as Kurt or anybody, that I can talk to about something that's going on with me. And to be able to, in 10th step, I think when we 10th step, it's more on listening. The one thing that I've become more aware of with the people that have called me and kind of doing 10th step things, it's not so much on what they're telling me in their story. It's the fact that they picked up the phone. I said, my God, you picked up the phone. Amazing. Let's check that off. That's a good deal. Not so much about the other stuff. We're going to screw up, obviously. 10 steps says we're going to be wrong. None of us are going to do perfect. We screw up, that's normal. It's just we're going to screw up. We're humans. And I just need somebody to shine the light enough. That's why I think we're all candles to each other. When I get in a dark place, I'll call one of you candles, and you'll shine enough light until I reconnect with that presence deep down inside of me. So that sense of his spirit comes into me, as it says here. I've received strength. Much has already been said about receiving. I'm receiving strength, inspiration, direction from him who has all knowledge and power. Not from my brain, but from a higher source. If I'm carefully following the directions I've begun. Now listen to this. It doesn't say I get new knowledge. It says I sense the flow of his spirit into me. To some extent, I have become God conscious. I have begun to develop this vital 6th sense, but I must go further, and that means more action. Be present, for the presence is my wish each day. And If I can feel that presence for just a little bit, I feel the grace. And when I have that grace given to me, it's really grace. I don't deserve it. I really don't. Obviously, I've told you some of my highlights on what I thought were good. And the road gets narrower and the horizon gets broader. Bev would tell me that all the time. I didn't know what she was talking about. But I want to tell you that when I got to 8 years and I look back on the first 7 years, I didn't want to be doing anything that I was doing those first 7 years. And I was grateful. So it's not a bad thing. If you just look at your time, if you've got 10 years, look back at 5 years. Do you want to be doing what you were doing at 5 years? More than likely you don't. I didn't. And kind of go. The road gets narrower and the horizon gets broader. And it gets so to the point where there's like hope. I guess that's it. Hope. Thanks. Your turn, Kurt.
Thanks, Mary. I was thinking, when you just said that, I was thinking about in the beginning, it says, we set right any new mistakes. See, like what Mary was saying, see, they're mistakes now. They're not shame-based faults. They're mistakes. Welcome to the human condition. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm not creating this story out of fear, out of shame, out of guilt. It's a different perception, the same environment. Isn't that what the book says? Different perception, the same environment. Ideas, emotion, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces, suddenly are cast aside. That's the way it says it in the book, something like that. So, I was thinking what you said. I kept thinking about Don Coya. Since he's not here, I'll talk about him. It's funny, you say, well, I asked him to sponsor me 11 years ago. And I'll have you know, he hasn't answered me yet. He said, well, we'll think about it. We'll talk about it. Of course, he hasn't answered me. And, his wife called me one time and she said, I'm not sure. She said, is it you who sponsor him or he who sponsors you? I said, probably a little bit of both. And what's funny about that is why he did that. See, it's really clear to me today why he did that. Because, he's got an eagle eye for seeing things that people, don't see. And I think he could see that I was trying to put him up here like this. And he got that right away, boy, and he just brought it right back down to here. And that's where he's kept it. He's kept it shoulder to shoulder, like Mary said, ever since then. And, I've learned a lot from him over 25 years. I've known him 25 years. And part of this was a huge piece that was missing in my first 19 years. I had a lot of information about 1011, but I had no experience with 1011. Like it wasn't an integrated practice. It wasn't a way of living. It was a way of talking in AA, or it was a way of sharing information, or it was a way of letting you know how much I knew, which was very stage specific. That's just kind of I think we all go through those kind of stages. So no fault, no guilt, no, just fact. And there's a lady that says this, I love this, and I want to make this clear before we go into 11, is something needed to be clear about, who was doing this. I kept saying it was me. I missed something. And in the third step, it says being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what defeated us. Now, excuse me, but there's a separation here. We're the us, the self is the condition. The self-centeredness is the condition. Another lady said it this way: the ego is a stage-specific phase in the development of a human being. We must transcend that phase because we're more than that. Let me say it again. The ego isn't a thing, it's a thought process. It's a stage-specific phase in the development of a human being. We must transcend that. because we're more than that. Well, that's the more is all Mary's been talking about. The more, that's what I've been trying to point to. That's what I was doing with the now. We can't talk about it. We can use metaphors. We can, we can tell stories. But we can't put it into language because we can't capture it that way. That's what the mind wants to do. So it says, to some extent, we become God conscious. We develop this vital sixth sense. So I don't think it's a sixth sense. I think it's a seventh sense. And I'll tell you why. Because I think my five senses, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, feeling, I think the sixth sense is we are so in our thinking. I think the seventh sense is that God consciousness. We are mind bound. We're totally mind bound. This is the condition of self. It says in the book early, if you take it another step, not in the obsession, it says the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. And this is what I mean by, I'll just give you a quick rundown to it. See, why is the third step made a decision? Because we can't turn our will and life over to God. Why? Because it ain't ours. We've been driven up to this point by the condition of self. And we don't even know that. So we make a decision, we do the steps up through 9, and we realize we were driven all along by this condition. This kind of gives a reorientation. It gives you this reorientation. And then you realize, now this is why I make a decision, because I can't turn my will in life because it ain't my will. I think the whole time it's my will. It's not my will. It's self's will. That's what the book's been saying all along. You've been driven by this self that you thought was you. It ain't you. And I'll tell you, it can't be you because John's got it, Lisa's got it, Clint's got it, Dawn's got it, Mary's got it. It can't be you. So we get to this point, it says step 11 suggests prayer meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. I remember I got a card one time from Joe, and it was Gandhi was sitting there on a spinning wheel, spinning his cotton to make his clothes. And we had this little thing we used to do. We'd send cards to each other with quotes out of the big book. And in the card, it said, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. And here's Gandhi spinning this little thing. It's kind of cute. I still have it in that picture. Then we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. Well, most of us are book guys, so what's the proper attitude, right? So I'm just go back to page 55, just to give you a kind of an idea. We can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly. That kind of assumes you're not. Encourages you to search diligently within yourself. This is an unused muscle for us. We want to listen to everybody else. This is an unused muscle. Then, if you wish, you can join us on this broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come. This is the gnosis I was talking about earlier. So it says, so that's a conditional statement. It works if you have the proper attitude. It'd be easy to be vague about this matter, but we're not going to. I mean, basically that's what they're saying. Yeah, we believe we can make definite and valuable. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Well, I could not do that from the condition of self because I tore myself down, or self tore me down. Let's reword it. It was always through guilt, shame. It was always through the lens of guilt and shame. I screwed up, I effed up, I that. I could not constructively review my day until Koyas explained this to me. He said, that's not what it says. I said, what do you mean that's not what it says? He said, well, it's real simple. It's not what it says. It says you constructively review your day. You're going to build on it. And then he told me the story, and I know most of you guys have heard it. He told me the story about Johnny Looking Cloud and you. About how he went up to Johnny Looking Cloud to see him because he had some issues with, I think it was 6 and 7. And he's, when we're new, we just we call somebody and then we just start rambling. We don't ask, do you have a minute? We just kind of impose our will on it. And we talk for 10 or 15 minutes. Well, that's what he did with Johnny Looking Cloud. And the whole time, Johnny Looking Cloud just sat there and whittled his little stick with his knife, waited for Don to stop talking. When he stopped talking, he took him outside. He said, come out here, follow me. He said, I want you to draw a line in the sand. And he took his stick and he drew this line, Johnny Looking Cloud, with his cane. And he said, now, Don, I want you to get on that line. I want you to walk the line. And so he got on the line. He started walking. And Johnny Looking Cloud came up to the right of him and pushed him off the line. Don turned around and said, what'd you do that for? He said, get back on the line. So Don walked back on the line, got back on the line, started walking a little further. Johnny Looking Cloud came over to the left and pushed him off the line. What did you do that for? He said, get back on the line. He said he was getting really pissed off about 5 or 6 times after that. And he said, when he got to the end of the line, Johnny Looking Cloud said, turn around and look at the line. Don turned around and there was a line in the sand and the footprints off the sand. And he said, you think this path, he called it the red road, the spiritual path, is that line? He said, it is not. The spiritual path, you see those footprints off and then back on the line and off, and back on the line and off, back on. That's the spiritual path. And he put his hands out like this. He said, you think the line is the path. It's not. And I got it. I got constructively review day. I'm not doing this through guilt and shame. I'm doing this through clarity and looking at mistakes. I thought, this is how we grow. Ken Wilber says spiral dynamics. He calls it this. Richard Rohr says 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. Well, everybody's got their way of interpreting this, right? This is how we grow. There are no straight lines in nature. This is a construct of human thought. You look at a tree that's on the edge of the ocean, and its character is shaped by the conditions of the wind. Its very shape, it's unique to it. It's shaped that way. You look at a redwood, it's shaped totally different. It's another tree. See, this is exactly, all this started to make sense. See, me drinking at 19 years, that wasn't fault. I was dead on the money. All I was trying to do was connect. I was dead on the money. It's just the way I was trying to connect. That's all the guilt and shame dropped. And I understood what he said to me way back when I was drinking in Newport Beach, when Rhonda served me divorce papers and I lit them on fire and threw them in the kitchen. He said to me, he called me, I was in a little bay drinking because I went down to see a divorce attorney, and I thought, here we go again. I thought, well, you can't do this without 6-pack. So I went and got a 6-pack and a bottle, and I sat in the corner of the bay, and the phone rings. And of course, this is what Jimmy just said. Boy, Don never calls, but when he calls, he's right on time. And he called and he goes, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm drinking. He said, well, how's that working for you? I said, working pretty good. It just started. And he said, we had a little conversation, and he said to me, I got a question. And I said, what's the question? He said, were you serious when you took the 3rd step in 1986? And I thought about it for just a minute. I thought, geez, yeah, I couldn't have been more serious. He said, well, I'm going to tell you something. You're not going to understand it. This is key. He goes, you're not going to understand it. He said, but all this drinking, all this is part of that decision. Now, my comment to him was, will you call my wife and tell her that? Because I'm in a world of shit. See? I couldn't get what he was saying. What he was saying was that he was talking about the same thing that Johnny Looking-Cloud was talking about on that line, on that path, on and off. See? It's bigger than this. It's way bigger than this. I made a decision, and this was just part of my learning process. I had to learn by corrective measures. And all this started to make sense in the book, in the later chapters, because it wasn't a right and wrong paradigm. I mean, Rumi says this thing. He says, there's a field beyond right and wrong. I'll meet you there someday. And I think that's what they're pointing at here. We always say, put down the hammer in AA. Put down the hammer. Put down the hammer. Nobody's going to treat you as bad as you treat you. Right? So when we retire at night, we constructively, where were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Well, here we go again, back to that thing Mary. Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? I mean, it sounds like they're kind of talking about the same stuff that I'm supposed to be paying attention to during the day. This is just to pick up what I missed, right? This is just a review, a nightly review. This is not the 10th step. This is the 11th step nightly review. I'm just picking up what I missed during the day, right? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking what we could do for others and pack into the stream of life? You guys have heard me chant all this. The stream of life, I thought, when I read this about, a couple 100 times, I thought, where in the hell did he get that, stream of life? That's a strange phrase. But I'd read enough of William James to know that Bill stole a lot of shit from William James, a variety of religious experience, which was the Gifford Lectures in 1902. He loved to borrow stuff. What do they call it? Plagiarism or something like that? So I looked up stream of life, and guess what popped up? Rabindranath Tagore, which was a Nobel laureate in England, English laureate in 1920. And he had a poem, it's called The Stream of Life. And if you never read that poem, you don't know what Bill's asking in that question. You read that poem, you'll know exactly what Bill's asking. And I thought I had it up, but I was going to read it. Now because I can't remember where I got it. Hold on one second. Somebody Google it. So here's what I did. I thought, well, that's weird. I wonder if he really got that from, that. So I went on Stepping Stones and I looked at the books that were on his shelf when Bill died. Guess what book was on his shelf? Rabindranath Tagore. Kind of coincidental, isn't it? I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Anybody find it? You got it, Don? Read it, Don.
My dogs are barking. Hopefully they'll calm down. Hi.
I got it, Don.
Go for it, because I'm afraid my dog's going to bark.
Thanks.
Okay. Clint Jones, alcoholic. Stream of life. The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth and numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and of death, in ebb and in flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment. Keep going, Kurt.
Yeah.
I came across this rich celebration of inner being from the Bengali poet Tagore today as I was looking for something in my pile of scribbled and printed poems, and was struck again by its rhythm and flow and the sense of belonging it gives me.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So
Sorry,
Merton,
Don.
Merton has a thing he says, you know, he talks about the cosmic dance. He has a thing, it's in the back of New Seeds of Contemplation. It's one of the chapters is called the General Dance. And it says, if we could let go of our own obsession with what we think the meaning of it all is, we might be able to hear him in his mysterious cosmic dance. We don't have to go far to catch echoes of this game and of this dancing. When we're alone on a starlit night, when we can see groves of birds, junipers, birds eating groves of junipers, when we hear an old frog land in a quiet pond, the turning inside out of all values, the newness, the emptiness, and purity of vision make themselves evident of this cosmic dance. It's all pointing to the same thing, this great reality within us. So you kind of get a sense of this thing Mary had talked about earlier, I was throwing sticks at. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about, we're way bigger than this mind-bound paradigm that we've lived in for so long. We must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. What's that? That's falling back into the bondage of self, falling back into that thing. For that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So I always get on this tangent, so I might as well do it today. It does not say we ask God to forgive us. That's not what it says. If you listen to this book, it was written with a Christian idiom, with the anthropomorphic pointing to God. It says his, her, it doesn't say her, it says his. So when it says we ask God's forgiveness, now that's really funny. It doesn't say we ask God to forgive us. God never judged me in the first place. And the reason I know this is because when I experience God's forgiveness, what I experienced was I said this to Mike earlier, I experienced the absence of me, the false identification with self. And I experienced interconnectedness, love, peace, serenity, grace. I could throw a lot of words at it. It let me know that I was never separated. I only thought it was. Chuck C. says this in his book. He says, you only have one problem. That's conscious separation with God. He said, when that problem is resolved, all other problems become situations. Now, I think he was hitting them dead on the money. See, this is Ramana Maharshi's quote. How do we treat others? There are no others. This is what it's saying. When I'm asking God's forgiveness, I'm asking to be in that place that Mary talked about. I've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Why am I asking for this? Because this is where corrective measures come from. This is where intuitive thought comes from. This is where inspiration comes from. This is where movement of the spirit comes from. This is where that. You get what I'm pointing to. So this is a little different than doing the opposite of what I think. Now, I did that for a long time, and it was stage specific. It had a ceiling on it. This is about effectiveness. This is about understanding. It was stage specific. So I need to be moved. Why? Because because that's what we bring into the world. We bring a much bigger, fuller, real part of ourselves into the world. That's what makes it so beautiful. So this had a whole different feel for me when Don explained this to me from a different perspective. 11:30, what, 12:30. Do we want to stop here and break for lunch, or how do you want to work this, you guys? I know this is a lot to sit on here.
Let's go ahead and open it up for question and answer, if that's okay with you, Kurt and Mary. Or comments or sharing anything, maybe just for maybe the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll kind of regroup from there.
Right, sounds good to me.
So go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to, or raise your hand. Either one is great.
Oh, good, you put that in the chat. That's great. Thanks, Joel.
I want to thank you again for, I think that's absolutely fantastic. I love 10 and 11. Love 10 and 11. There's so much you can do with 10 and 11. There was something that I was sitting this morning, and it's like when I wake up, you know, I do my morning prayers and my practices, my upon awakening, and I'm sitting in meditation. And then once the meditation ends, that's when the meditation really begins. Because I get into this meditative state all day long. And I notice the fruits of my labor, even when I'm connected to this power, grow. And it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So I appreciate everything. And I want to thank you guys for being here and everyone that is here to participate in this. So that's all I wanted to really say. Thank you so much. Don, you have a question? You have your hand up?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment and have maybe Mary and Curtis elaborate on what I'm about to say. Because so one of the things that I'm going to quote Mary, I hope I don't expose too much, but she often says, I'm waiting on the Lord. And there takes so as I'm reminded of that, it's also the ebb and flow that it was talking about in the poem, and that space where I have to wait to be able to get to that consciousness that they're speaking about. And if for me, it is becoming an easier application of like a release to not have to do something to fix whatever fear has brought to the table. But I'd like to hear maybe y'all talk about that a little bit.
You want me to? Or you, Kurt? You want
it? Well, I think that's the position of neutrality. You know, I think this is, we think that this goes back to that thing Mary was saying earlier about, you know, we have a lot of conditioning. And I heard it put like this, it really makes sense. It's like this conditioning is a comet that passes through, right? That comet has a long tail on it. And it takes a lot of time for that tail to finally dissipate. And that conditioning is like, I was so used to doing things. It's like, I thought if I wasn't doing things, I was being lazy. But see, I was doing things to be busy because I couldn't be still. Now, I was trying to do stillness and could never do it. There's a big difference. The being still is, I think, what Mary was talking about when she said, we've been placed in a position of neutrality. See, I didn't put, it's like we stepped from bridge to shore. It's not like we stepped. When I stepped from bridge to shore, the first thing was obvious to me was I didn't step there. I got carried. I was brought there. That was the first thing that was obvious. It's like when you kind of see you can't quit drinking, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, all of my attempts to stop were just forms of control. It becomes super clear. It's because the problem, seen from the problem, is never clear. It's just not clear. But from the solution, the problem becomes very self-evident. It's just like that. So I think that's a lot to do with, what do you think, Mary? The position of neutrality. I think it's that waiting is, I don't know, is it waiting or is it just being where you are until you're moved?
There's several things going through my mind. I don't know if we can formulate something. You want to formulate something, God? I mean, really, do you want to? One of the things I think that went through my mind was that we're talking about non-dualistic
Yes.
Experience. We're not talking the mind. I only saw things as black and white, right or wrong. So I'll give you an example of how I finally started to understand why my survival skills or defects of character, why it said that I could, my creator, I'm now willing for you to have all of me, both the good and the bad. I didn't realize that I could not differentiate between the good and the bad. So let's say, for instance, I saw some trait that I didn't like about myself. And I couldn't differentiate between the good and the bad. So I might think that, like my sponsor said to me, I remember she gave me the best example because I experienced it. She said, you're a very giving person. And I said, thank you. Wonderful. I'm such a giving person. She said, but your giving is not an asset. It's a liability to the extent that you give. Whoa, that just blew it out of the water for me. To the extent that I use one area of my life is the liability. It's not that, it's kind of like you were talking about fear is the highest thing. To the extent that I do fear is the liability, okay? Sometimes love, to the extent I love is a liability. It's not an asset. So things like that started to, I got a little hint that maybe my perception of things wasn't right. So when I hear people, and I don't hear any non-dualistic, there's no room in there, so to speak, to go and see the black and the white, kind of like that yin-yang signal, everything has dark and light in it, okay? It's kind of like the red road. How far we get off, it's good and it's bad. So it's non-dualistic. It's not bad or good. It just is. And that was what was going through my mind, that in order to get in, when I entered the world of the spirit, and as you said, when you were talking about my constructively reviewing my day, I don't beat myself up with a thing. I see what it is. It's like, oh, wow. And I live from a principle, because it says to practice these principles in all our affairs. So to the extent of my honesty, was I being honest? To the extent I was honest, could have been a liability. Everything, I have to look at things and kind of, I can't just say, well, I was honest. Well, good. Great. How was that? Was it love and tolerance? Where was that? Things like that would change it. And so I wait on the Lord. How did I get to saying that? Dawn is right. I say that a lot. In fact, I realized one time, if someone says, what step are you on? My question to them is, in what area of my life? Because I didn't realize that I had compartmentalized my growth. I was willing to work on being a mother, but how was I doing in the rest of this stuff? So in what area of my life? I would say as being a mother today, I am in step 10, 11, and 12. In other areas of my life, I might just now become aware that my life's unmanageable. And I hadn't even known enough to ask God to help me with it. I was self-sufficiency. So when somebody says, how you doing? Sometimes I just say, oh, I'm waiting on the Lord, because I'm working. I've done steps 1 through 5. I've done a 6th and 7th step. And when I'm waiting on the Lord, in my 6th and 7th step, when I've humbly asked, and I've been humbled after what I write down, what I'm up to, let me tell you, I'm not well. Missy will tell you that. She isn't well yet. I'm not. And I remembered I was sitting and I realized I had to wait on the Lord. And when I wait on the Lord, there's 2 things that come to me. I know when I'm done with the 7th step. This is my experience. It's probably nobody, I don't care, but this is my experience with 6 and 7. When I'm waiting on the Lord, when I've humbly asked, and I sit back and I wait, I receive 2 sensations, or I don't even know how to explain it. I receive compassion and forgiveness for myself as well as for whoever's going to be on my step list. See, I don't do check-off sobriety anymore. I used to check it off and I'm done and now I'm great and I've accomplished. I'm not arriving anywhere, but but I've gotten closer to this presence that gives me the power to put someone on a list and to approach somebody. When I have compassion for them as well as forgiveness for myself, and both, it goes both ways. It's like, it's not just one, then there's another source that comes in. I can't produce forgiveness. I can say I forgive you. It's a whole different thing on whether or not I've forgiven you. That doesn't come from me. I don't have that power. I wished I did, but I don't. Just because I say it doesn't mean it's there. There was this sign that I lived my life for the last 48 years. It was on the coffee shop wall in the first year or so in recovery. And it said, after everything is said and done, more is said than done. And I kept reading it over and over, and I kept thinking to myself, God, that's true. I say a lot of things, but I haven't done anything. And my goal has been to do this stuff before I tell you about it, because this is a program of sharing my experience, strength, and hope. It's not a program of sharing Kurt's experience. Now, he might say something for me to do. I'll do it and get my own experience, and I can say, Kurt suggested this, but this is my experience with it. There's a lot of people going around quoting other people, and they're not quoting it from their experience. They're using some of the long-time stuff. As you were very clear on that. I loved it when you said you had the right words to say in the meeting so that everybody would know how bright you were. And I did that. That's the thing I found at 20 years. I kept people away from me with my knowledge of this program. I have a lot of knowledge. I'm not a dope. I still am pondering new things I found in books recently, but it's like, wow, I don't want to be a parrot about anything on this. I want to share my experience, strength, and hope, because if you're like I am, and you're as alcoholic as I am, it is the people that came to me with the depth and weight. My first meeting was Sybil's came and said to me, welcome home, honey. God, she was the first woman to get sober west of the Mississippi. And I mean, this woman had 30-something years, and that was 48 years ago. So, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like this woman knew with depth and weight what my soul and how shattered I was inside. Just shattered. She touched me inside. I don't want to become a mechanic here. I see a lot of people trying to gain all the knowledge. I have people come to me. Finally, I said, why do you want me to take you through the steps? You've been through them 100,000 times. What the hell? Why would? Because I don't have anything. But if they would come to me and say, I want to get a closer relationship to God. Yeah, I'll go through the book with you. I just had the privilege of going through the book for, I don't know how long was it. How long was it, Dawn? Maybe 8-10 months. I don't know what it was, with Australia and these women. And they wanted to go through it. I said, why? And I said to him, I said, if you want to get a closer relationship to the presence, yeah, I'll go through it. And you know what I did? I circled all the lines in here that say that it doesn't say we think different, we have to change our mind. It says we have to change our heart. It doesn't have anything to do with this knowledge that we get. It's another level. I don't know how to explain it other than that. But yeah, I'm still waiting on the Lord. I really am. I have areas of my life that I'm waiting on the Lord. And it's fun. It's just fun. It's an adventure. Joy. This is not as heavy as we make it sound, I guess. I hope that helped, Don. Just wait on the Lord, will you? It'll come to you.
We got Adam.
Adam.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, how are you?
Good, man.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the master class. It's neat to hear people talk about. I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. I'm really liking what's coming through loud and clear to me. I just keep hearing that it's both and. That we're not in. It's not in either or experience. That it's both and it's like a core principle of wisdom. And so it's really, I'm just hearing, examples and stories and you guys pointing at wisdom, and that it's what I've found in my experience is that's required is to have a relationship with paradox, like the neutrality, that neutrality is my experience of neutrality is often that I'm being asked to hold two simultaneous truths that are opposing, and that if and when I'm doing that, then there's a chance that I'm in this kind of neutral space. And sometimes, so neutrality doesn't feel so much like that line that you were talking about in the spiritual path. It doesn't feel like it's this tightrope. That if I'm really holding two opposing truths, that as I'm doing that, you can be like wildly neutral. But that's how you get the cosmic joke.
Yeah, right.
But so thank you. Thanks, guys. It's been really fun. What a Sunday morning.
Yeah, good seeing you, buddy. Adam's a good friend of ours. He's out here with us.
Okay, Kurt and Mary. Okay, if we take a break, and Kurt and Mary, I'd like to weigh in. How long do you want to do the break?
Well, what do you think?
I was thinking a shorter break rather than lunch, just because of time.
Yeah.
But I want to.
We're going to stop at 1:30.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to come back at